Ooh, yeah. Hello and welcome to Grande's Graveyard. I am your horror host of the evening, the Pajama Pants, player, the Cemetery Man of Salem, Mass, John Grande, live and in living color here with you on the Ram Nation Radio app and, of course, Facebook Live. And today I am joined by my very special guest via phone, satellite, via the great Miranda, who I bribed with Cool Ranch Doritos, Ryan the Hitman Snyder, and she is going to unmute him right now. Ryan, you there? What's going on, buddy?
Yo, man, what's going on, brother? How you doing?
Dude, I'm doing well, man. I just got out of class. It was rough today, man. We were just doing all these horrendous psychology projects that I know nothing of. I was just looking all day, looking forward to talking a little bit of Halloween with you, man. But I wanted to ask you, man, since it's Rocktober, this is the first ever Rocktober edition of Grande's Graveyard. What have you been watching around the Halloween season? Have you watched any awesome horror favorites?
Yeah, so at the beginning of October, I always do like a 31 Days of Horror where I just watch a horror movie every day, even though I do that every day anyway, but it's special in October, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
So the first one I watched was Evil Dead. I watched that Monday, and that's a classic, as you know. Great movie.
Absolutely.
Tuesday, I watched Phantasm 1. And then yesterday I watched Phantasm 2, so today I might be watching 3.
Oh, boy. Is 3 Oblivion, or is that 4?
I think that's 4. I have them right in front of me. Yeah, that's 4.
Okay, yeah, I thought 4 was Oblivion. Yeah, dude, I'm a huge fan of all 3 of those movies that you mentioned. I mean, Evil Dead is probably one of the great horror movies of all time. And the same thing, Phantasm's really, really underrated. And I think Phantasm 2 is a lot of fun, too. I know you were saying, we were talking over text, that you may like part 2 a little bit more than 1, and I think it's one of those sequels that it revs up everything in the original, you know, like it's very much more like, whereas the original was more simple, complex, the second one, it kind of tones up everything, and I think that's really why it works in a lot of ways. But I know we talked a little bit about this, and I wanted to mention this one on here. I watched Pet Sematary 2 a couple nights ago at work, and I know that you're a big fan of Pet Sematary 2.
Yeah, man. Like I told you before, I think I might like it more than the original. It's more.
I'm losing him a little bit, Miranda.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you a little bit. You just repeat that? I'm sorry, we lost you for a second.
What did I say? Oh yeah. To be honest, I like it better than part 1. I think it's more fun.
Dude, yeah, you know, it's a crazy movie, and like there's so much to it. Like the Clancy Brown character of Gus is one of the most backcrap crazy horror characters of all time. Like he is nuts in this movie. Like for people that don't know, it is 2 kids, and it's like years after the first one, and this in the opening scene, this kid's mother gets electrocuted and killed by accident. She's like on the set of this like production, and she gets killed, and then basically it's him trying to move on from it, and then he discovers the pet cemetery, and he discovers that he could bring his mother back from the dead. And it's one of those movies that kind of plays on the morals of, if you lost somebody, would you bring them back? If there was a 1 in a million chance, would you do that? And like I think it's a lot of fun, man. Part 2 is just balls to the walls crazy, and it's like it just does not let off the gas pedal. Like the crazy killer dog. There are scenes where I believe the dad character is like fantasizing about having sex, and then all of a sudden the woman turns into a dog.
Turns into a dog, yeah.
Yeah, like there's just some bizarre stuff in there, and the climax of the movie always, like the final act, always just threw me. It's like they bring the mother back from the dead, and she's in the attic with her son, and then for some reason, like she burns the house down and starts melting. Like it's just absolutely bizarre. But man, I gotta be honest, I had some fun with that one too. I've got plenty more movies lined up for the month of October. It's gonna be fun. It is absolutely the best time to be watching horror movies, and I hope throughout the rest of these shows that I'm gonna do throughout the semester, I can give more and more recommendations to people that have not seen or heard of these movies. And I think that's just the coolest thing in the world, that you're doing the 31 days of horror, even though you do it every night. I know you're a hardcore horror fan, but yeah, I just think that's super.
Every day I try to watch one.
Dude, that's dedication. Like there are some days where I'll be honest, man, I'll get burnt out. I'll just be like, maybe I'm going to turn on wrestling, or I'll turn on the sports, or I'll turn on something just to. But man, you are as dedicated a horror fan as I know. Like I don't know anybody that watches as much as you, as consistently as you, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah, man, my wife thinks I'm insane because I watch one every day. So.
And she's not a horror fan, correct?
No, she hates it. She thinks the movies I watch are awful just because a lot of the ones I watch are from like the 80s, and she's like, "This is terrible," and I'm just like, "But I love it. It's great to me."
Dude, that's fantastic. I really like it. I hopefully maybe if you can't convert your wife, I do know that you have a child on the way in a week or so. I just think that's absolutely amazing. I'm glad I was able to get you on here before all that goes down, because your life is absolutely going to be turned upside down and become all that hectic when that baby does come. I think that's absolutely crazy, but I'm really, really glad I got to have you on the show today, man.
Yeah, man, I'm excited.
Yeah, man. So, okay, so without further ado, I say we get into it. I'm going to read the plot synopsis for the topic of the evening. It is the original Halloween from 1978. I have the little plot summary on my phone. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I'm cheating a little bit here, but I'm going to go ahead and read the synopsis, and then we're going to get into the original classic John Carpenter's Halloween. So, all right, let's get going. On a cold Halloween night in 1963, 6-year-old Michael Myers brutally murdered his 17-year-old sister, Judith. He was sentenced and locked away for 15 years. But on October 30th, 1978, while being transferred for a court date, now 21-year-old Michael Myers steals a car and escapes Smith's Grove. He returns to his quiet hometown where he looks for his next victims to cut, slash, and murder. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Halloween, John Carpenter's Halloween. I got to say right off the bat, this has got to be the most beloved horror movie of all time. Like, I can't think of a horror movie that is unanimously loved as much as this one. And I actually know from talking to you so much that you actually have a cool story. This is the movie that kind of broke you into the genre. If you wouldn't mind telling it, I'd love to hear it again, and I'm sure the listeners would love it. So shoot, man.
Yeah, man. So I was probably 7 or 8 years old. We're on vacation up at my parents they used to have a lake house, so we're up there. It's after the day, we went to the lake, went on the boat, went tubing, had some fun, got home. My Uncle Ronnie's like, "Have you ever seen Halloween?" I'm like, "No, I'm 7 years old. I've never seen that." So anyway, he's like, "All right, we'll pop that on." So he popped that in, watched the movie. I'm tense the entire time, scratching my head. Why is he walking so slow? Why is he walking so slow? But he's catching them. What's going on? I don't get it. So I watched that movie, and then from then on, I've been into that. That was my starting point, and from then on, I love the series, and I love every horror movie.
Dude, I love hearing stories like that. Like, it's so enlightening to hear stories like that, because there are a lot of people that don't know how into these movies we get and how much we really do love them at the end of the day. And Halloween, for me, it was Friday the 13th, the original Friday the 13th, and for you, it was Halloween. So two iconic slasher movies kind of broke us into the horror business and the horror world. And that's what I really, really love about it. I love hearing stories like that. And I mean, I don't think you could have picked a better movie to watch for the very first time for your first horror movie. I mean, that's unbelievable. It's one of the greats of all time. And
yeah, I was after I watched it, I probably slept on my parents' floor for about 2 months because I was terrified to sleep in my own bed.
Dude, that's amazing.
Yeah, I remember it distinctly. It's weird that I remember stuff like that.
Dude, but that's the amount of impact it had on your life, and that's why you remember stuff like that. I actually can remember the first time. I don't know how many Twilight Zone episodes you've seen, but there's one.
I've seen a few.
Have you seen the one, The Eye of the Beholder, where at the end all the doctors had the pig masks, like the pig faces?
I don't think so. The ones I've seen are the ones you told me to watch. I've watched a couple of those.
Oh, okay. Well, this one, it's all about this woman, and she's getting this like face surgery because she's the most ugly woman on earth, right? You never see her face till the end, and you realize at the end that she's a beautiful woman, and you're like, what? Like, what is going on? And then they show the doctors, and the doctors are all like have all these pig faces, and basically the whole twist is it's an alternate universe where ugly is beautiful and beautiful is ugly. And dude, the effects on these people's faces, the aesthetics and like all this stuff, like it absolutely terrified me to the point where I slept on the floor next to my mother's bed for a few years. Like, I'm not even kidding. I was maybe 6, 7 at the time, and I didn't leave till 8 or 9. Like, it was absolutely
movies that we shouldn't be watching at such a young age.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. It really plays into that forbidden factor. Like, should I have been watching Mrs. Voorhees stab Kevin Bacon through the throat? At the tender age of 6, probably not. But I think it's nice to get yourself into it early, because at a young age we're all kind of oblivious, and we don't know anything about anything. That's the beauty of it being a kid, and seeing these things for the first time, it's just so much more impactful. Like if you watch that movie, if you watch Halloween, Friday the 13th for the first time in your 20s, I don't know if it would have the same impact on people, especially today, because they're all CGI and explain this, explain that. They want everything explained to them. And the movie we're about to talk about today, there's not much explained. There is no motive to what Michael Myers does in Halloween, and I think that's what makes it that much more scary.
Yeah, it's like I said, so my uncle has kids now, so I showed them. They're 14 now, so I showed them Halloween about a couple months ago, and they said this is the worst movie they've ever saw. And I'm like, you guys just don't know movies now. They just don't have any. I just don't get it.
Yeah, I don't get it either. Like it's one of those things. I actually saw the movie a couple years ago with a group of friends from college, and it was a one-night screening. I believe it was October 28th, something like that. And he's like all my friends wanted to come with me, right? They're all like, oh, you're the horror king, good horror movies, go take us to see a good horror movie, right? And I'm like, okay, so John Carpenter's Halloween's playing in the theater, and of course it plays, and I watch the movie with them, and we get out of the theater, and I'm all jacked up and happy and stoked that I just saw one of my favorite horror movies on the big screen for the first time. And we get out of the theater, and they were all like, that was a piece of trash. What do you that's a good horror movie? That's a classic horror movie? What do you know about horror movies? And I was just like, wow, like the aesthetic has totally changed. Like you'll have these kids come up to you and tell you that Saw 5 is a classic movie. Like it's just a different dynamic. You just scratch your head. You're like, that's a classic movie to you? Like that's like you got to see the good stuff. And like some people get it and some people don't, but I'm glad that we're kind of in the small boat of diehard horror fans that do get this movie. But all right, so let's transition into the movie itself. I gotta say, one of my favorite openings in horror movie history, of course, you have the classic POV, the point of view shot of Michael Myers, which a lot of people say, oh, well, it was done in Black Christmas. I think it's done much better here. I think the POV stuff is done much better here. Basically, what you have is the point of view of the killer is where the camera is pointing at, and you have this mask put over the camera. And then you just hear breathing, and Michael is stalking throughout the house, the outside of his house. He sees his sister Judith and the boyfriend, and they're about to have sex, and he's kind of stalking his way around the house. And man, like, I don't know about you, but the first time I saw that, I was like, this is so intense. Like, what is going to happen here? This is a little 6-year-old boy trying to kill somebody with a butcher's knife. Like it's very traumatic. But what were your memories of first seeing that scene?
Yeah, man. I like you just said, he was only 6 years old. So I was right around that age. So I'm like, what if this happens to me? What if I just decide to pick up a kitchen knife and just start going crazy? Like, I probably shouldn't be watching this.
Exactly, and like that's the thing. It's one of those things that you feel like you shouldn't be watching it, but it's so much fun to keep going. And it's like I was like mortified. I was like, oh my god, this is a little boy. And like I love after he kills the girl, he comes outside and he's just standing there, and the parents kind of unmask him, and it's just this blank, expressionless face, which of course Donald Pleasance goes on to explain as his Dr. Loomis character. And they transition into the next scene is it's 30 years or no, it's 18 years later. No, 15 years later. I'm sorry. I'll get it right here, folks. It's 15 years later, and it's Donald Pleasance, who plays Dr. Sam Loomis, who is Michael's psychiatrist for 15 years. He's driving to Smith's Grove to transfer him on, of course, of all nights, Halloween Eve, right? You have to go. You got to go with this.
He picked the worst night to go.
Yes, exactly. He picked the absolute worst night he could have picked. And that's the thing. Like, I really, really enjoy that it's totally sticks to these kind of rules, you know? And, of course, Michael escapes. He gets in the car, and he drives away to Haddonfield. And I just really, really always enjoyed Donald Pleasance's character in this movie, because he is one of those characters that I think really helps shape the myth, the legend, the aura of Michael Myers. And you really get a good sense that this guy really was his doctor for 15 years, and that he really did look at him as this whole kind of entity of evil. And there's no better scene to describe that is to when he's telling the Sheriff Brackett how bad of a cat that Michael Myers truly is. And I always get goosebumps in that scene. I actually put it on my Instagram story last night. There's a scene where they go back to the old Myers house because they believe Michael is now migrated into Haddonfield. And they're both standing in the room, and he goes, the cop kind of thinks Sam Loomis is a little bit crazy. He's like, you sure? I think you're overreacting a little bit and this and that. And Sam Loomis is just absolutely dead serious, and he says something along the lines of, I'm paraphrasing here, but I met him 15 years ago. There was nothing left, not a conscience, not a reason or understanding of even the most rudimentary sense of good or evil, life or death, right or wrong. I met this 6-year-old child with a blank, pale, and motionless face and the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. And that has got to be the greatest horror origin of all time, because there's no reason, there's no rhyme, there's no explanation as to why he's doing these things and why he is evil. But it just really, really works. And it gives me goosebumps just talking about it, man. I think Michael Myers is one of the great, if not the greatest, horror movie characters of all time. You there, buddy?
Did I lose you?
Yeah, you lost me for a second. You hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Sorry, dude. Oh my God,
That's okay, buddy. No
Let me
worries.
Go outside. Hold on.
No
Let me
worries.
Go outside. Hold on.
Okie doke. But yeah, man, Michael Myers is one of the great horror movie characters of all time, and I think that aura, that mythos, I think it's absolutely a match, man. What do you think of it?
I mean, I love Michael Myers, dude. Dr. Loomis makes the movie to me. I think he's just the way he goes about it is great. Mm-hmm. And that, like I said, as the movies go on, Dr. Loomis gets a little crazier and crazier, and you're like, oh, what's he doing? People should know by now that Michael does exist because you've seen it before.
Yeah, exactly. And there's just one of these things in this movie that always kind of got me. I was like, why does nobody take him seriously? Like, this guy brutally murdered his sister when he was just a child. Now he's a grown-up 21-year-old man. Imagine the carnage he's going to unleash. And, of course, we're introduced to our final girl, Jamie Lee Curtis, who plays Laurie Strode, who has become probably the most famous and beloved final girl as well. So here's the dynamics you have going. You probably have the most prolific serial killer in horror film history and the most prolific protagonist final girl in Laurie Strode, played by Jamie Lee Curtis. I think these two really, really work because it wasn't a movie that blurred the lines. It was very black and white. Like, you have your clear protagonist and your clear antagonist. And the thing with Jamie Lee is she's very, like, she's not a lot less promiscuous than her friends. She's very quiet. She's very caught up in her books and stuff like that. And that's really the template. I feel like that template for the final girl started here, don't you think?
Oh yeah, I agree with you, man.
And her friends, which is I thought it was so funny, is her friends Annie and Linda are just like the biggest I don't know if I could say that word on here, but they're very.
Yeah, I was going to say it, but I didn't want to say anything.
Yeah, they're very sexually active. I'll say that. I was going to say something else, but I will not for the sake of people listening. But yeah, they're very, very sexually active, and they're always kind of bugging Laurie. Oh, you should ask someone to go to the dance and ask old Ben Tramer and all this stuff. And like, I really enjoy her side friend characters in this movie because I think they're really over the top, but I think they really work at being over the top. Like, I think Linda is so much fun. Like, she's like, every other word is totally. She's like, I totally forgot my math book, and I'm totally gonna go hit the house tonight with Bob and have sex with him. I'm totally like, and it's just like, you're like, oh my god, like, does she even realize how bad she sounds? But I think that really works. And Annie being over the top, Lindsay, like, she's like, they're both very over the top, but it really, really works because you don't need to like these characters. You don't need to love these characters. They just need to be stereotypical teens that are going to get picked off one by one. It's an easy formula to execute. And I really always liked them in the movie, but I think some of the most effective scenes in this movie is when the Shape, Michael Myers, that's, by the way, for people listening, his nickname of Michael Myers is the Shape, which is badass. And basically there are scenes where Michael is kind of walking throughout Haddonfield, and they play that classic John Carpenter score that we played in the intro. And it's just him walking and stalking and looking at these people while this iconic music is playing. And, man, like, the scene in the classroom, that always grabbed me. With Jamie Lee is sitting in the classroom, kind of dazing, wandering off, looking outside, admiring the sun and whatever. And all of a sudden she just sees a car across the street and Michael Myers staring right at her. And it's just – right? Isn't that the scariest scene? Like, that's always scared me, man. What did you think of it?
I mean, that seems great. I always go back and look at it. I'm like, he looks outside. He's standing there. He's seconds later, she looks back and he's gone.
Yeah, and there's a few times where that happens, right? Like the scene where he's
when he's in the backyard with through the laundry sheets.
Yeah, and she thinks that someone's trying to prank phone call her, and it's actually Annie just chewing, and you see, she's like, I think that old man was trying to watch me, and she's like, he's like 97, all he could do is watch. Like, I was like, yeah, that's true. But man, like, there's so many awesome scenes where Michael just appears and disappears, and there's a scene where they're walking home from school, and you see Michael standing next to the bush. And Laurie sees him. Annie has her head down. And Laurie says, look right there, look. And she looks up and there's nobody there. And she's like, oh, I think it's the guy you yelled at before. You know, you may have pissed him off. And she goes, hey, creep. And she goes, checks behind the bush. There's nobody there. And that's John Carpenter. That's John Carpenter at his finest, because what he's basically saying there is that evil can be there 1 second and it's gone the next. It can appear, the shape can appear, can disappear. And you keep hearing that breathing throughout the whole movie. And, like, that just, it absolutely scares me, man. Like, I think it's so well done. The atmosphere in this movie by John Carpenter, top notch. Like, I think this is one of the great horror movies for atmosphere as well. Wouldn't you say so?
Yeah, man. You know what? I've always thought the reason he's breathing, every time they show him he's breathing heavily, I always think when she sees him and then he's gone, he's running away. And then when you see him again, he's breathing heavily because he's out of breath.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. You know, I never even thought of that. It's actually a very good point. He's out of breath. And you know, that breathing has become iconic, and it's been made fun of over the years, like in movies like Student Bodies. I believe the killer was called the Breather. And that's like oh,
wow.
That's like the original. Yeah. That's one of the first movies to ever parody horror movies. It's called Student Bodies. And actually, if you remember, there was a movie with Megan Fox a few years ago called Jennifer's Body. And the poster of that movie totally ripped off Student Bodies. It's just like a dead body or somebody sitting on the desk. And it's the same thing. They just put Megan Fox on the desk, which is, you know, obviously a lot, you know, better looking to look at. But I mean, yeah, it's like, it's just everything about this movie, I think, is iconic in one way, shape, or form. And of course, you have not the most complex kills, but it's a movie that relies more on atmosphere, it relies more on tension, it relies more on build. And this is a movie that I think it really builds to that perfect crescendo of the final act of this movie. I think it really, really builds perfectly because it's slow, it's moving, they have a good soundtrack, you have decent enough characters, and then of course you have Michael Myers, who is, you know, like I said, one of the great horror characters of all time. But what did you think? What are some of your favorite scenes in this one? I've gone on and on all day. I want to hear some of your favorites.
I think you went through like all of them, most of them. I love the scene when she goes into the closet and he breaks in the closet and you see his face and the lights blinking on and off. I love that scene.
Oh, it's so good, man, right? Like, and I love you have two kids that Laurie Strode is actually babysitting. And one of them is convinced that the boogeyman is alive. And he keeps saying throughout the entire movie, you know, when's the boogeyman going to come get me? And where's the boogeyman live? And all these things about the boogeyman. And you're just like, oh, man, like this kid, he's not too far off.
He's the only one that actually sees him.
Yes, there's a point where they're playing hide and seek, and he sees Michael Myers carrying a dead corpse back into the house, and like kind of husband bride, you know, like groom and bride style, carrying in the arms like that, and that shot is just amazing, and they have that music playing. I love it. I love it too, right? Like it's just they have that music from The Thing from Another World playing on the TV in the background, and it's just Michael walking slowly with this dead body in his arms, and I was like, wow, like that is imagery done to its best. Like it's this young kid, which we were when we both saw this movie. I saw this movie, but I was probably 8 or 9, so I wasn't too far off from you. Just this young kid looking out the window, who's petrified of the boogeyman, who's petrified of Halloween and all these things, seeing the real boogeyman, seeing Michael Myers carrying this corpse back into the house. That is strong stuff. Like that is really, really strong stuff. And I think that
for a kid to see something like that too, that's crazy.
Yeah, and then he's screaming and crying, "Oh, I see the boogeyman!" And Laurie looks at the window, doesn't see him. Like now, like there have been points where Laurie sees him and then other people don't, and now this kid Tommy Doyle sees Michael Myers and Laurie doesn't. So you play on these themes of, oh my God, it's there. Nah, it's not there the next moment. And John Carpenter is the master at doing that. He does it quite a few times in this movie, and I really think he does it well. But I really the great thing about this movie, probably my favorite part, is the final chase scene. And Lori is just kind of sitting. She's tucked the kids into bed. She goes outside, walks across the street, and little does she know that all of her friends have been hacked and murdered. Annie's been murdered. Linda's been murdered. Linda's boyfriend, Bob, has been murdered. And that classic scene, I love the scene where they kill Linda. Linda and Bob just finished having sex, right? And Bob goes,
"Get me a beer."
Yeah, get me a beer, Bob. So Bob's like, all right, I'll get you a beer. Shut up. So he's like, okay. He goes down. He's all manly man. I just got laid, all this stuff. And he gets a beer and he thinks he hears something. And he kind of walks to the back door. He closes the back door and he goes, "Stop screwing around, Annie." And he opens the door and Michael just charges out of nowhere, lifts him up and then just bam, stabs him to the door, and so he's just standing like on the wall, like, and that's just one of the craziest things. And Michael kind of gives him the head tilt, right? And I always thought
the head tilt's my favorite. It's my favorite thing he does.
Yeah, and it's so simple, like that's the thing. It doesn't have to be complex. Like people were like, oh, if Freddy was to kill someone there, he would have said a one-liner, and that's Freddy. That's fine. But for Michael Myers, a simple tilt of the head, it just speaks volumes, and it's very, very well done in this movie. And of course, Michael goes back upstairs with a sheet on his head and sunglasses. No, not sunglasses. I'm sorry, Bob's glasses. And he has Bob's glasses over his ears and on his face. And she kind of like looks at him. She's like, "Where's my beer?" And of course, Michael Myers isn't going to answer. He's Michael Myers. And she kind of puts the sheet down and she goes, "You see anything you like?" And then that's one of those moments where if you're watching this with a crowd, somebody will be like, "Yeah, you bet your ass I do," like somebody will say, and that's the fun of it, that's horror. That's the boobs part of the Boobs, Blood, and Mayhem. And we love our sleeves.
The funny thing is, when I saw the movie, my uncle had when he showed it to me, it was a recorded version off TV. So I didn't even know you got to see her boobs in that scene until I was about 14, 15 when I actually went out and bought the movie.
Mm-hmm. And that must have been the ultimate surprise. Like, yes, I do see something I like instead of just nothing. That must have been so anticlimactic, especially for a 6-year-old. Like, I don't ever. Yeah, I've heard some people say that the cut version you don't get to see her boobs, but in this version,
she pulls the sheet down, but doesn't go down far enough.
That's awesome. It's like the ultimate plot twist. Like, no, she's not going to show him. But man, I love PJ Souls, and she's just like, "All right, where's my beer?" And she's like, "Are you going to talk to me or what?" And she's like, "Forget it," And then Michael strangles the hell out of her, which is amazing. And so fast forward back to the final chase scene. You have Lori going into the house and walking up the steps, and there's no lights on, and she sees the room at the end of the hall. She sees this light peeking out of the door. And I just love, she kind of slowly opens the door and you see Annie laying dead on the bed. And you see a tombstone above Annie that says Judith Myers. So Michael went to the cemetery, took out the tombstone, the headstone, and put it on this bed above where he had just killed his latest victim. And Lori just is just like kind of crying and is all nervous and all these things, and she turns around and she finds Linda and she finds Bob dead in the closet, and she's crying and she doesn't know what to do. She's hysterically, she's reached the point of, oh my gosh, they're all dead. And she walks out of the room and kind of backs into the corner, and they do this excellent shot of there's just it's her to the left side of the screen, and then there's a bunch of background foreground, right? So there's just this pitch black kind of doorway in the back, and they slowly but surely put the light on Michael's face as he appears in the background. And he stabs her arms, he flies down the steps, and then the chase is on. And I just always thought, how amazing is that scene? The shape can be anywhere. He's right behind you. He's in the darkness that you've stepped out of and realized that, oh my gosh, all my friends have been hacked and murdered. And man, the first time you see that, I screamed. I was like, whoa, like I did not expect Michael Myers to be in the doorway behind her, but that slow kind of fade in to see his face, work of art, man, don't you think?
Oh, yeah, dude. I totally agree with everything you're saying.
Yeah, and I just love the chase scene is fantastic, where she breaks out of the closet and she breaks out of the house, and then she runs to the house with the kids in it, and there's this awesome kind of back and forth struggle, and there's a point where you think, okay, she's killed him. She stabs him in the neck with a little bit of the needle, and she goes up the stairs, and she's like, oh, we're safe now, we're safe. And the kids are like, what happened, And she's like, there was a man, and Tommy goes, the boogeyman? And she goes, well, I killed him. And he goes, you can't kill the boogeyman. And then, bam, you cut right to Michael being right behind them, breathing with the knife pointed at them. And it's just like, I was like, oh my God, like now the kids are in trouble. Like, is he going to kill the kids? And of course, that classic scene in the closet where the shape is breaking in and the light is turning on and off and he's trying to kill Laurie. She gets him down again, and you think all is well. And you're like, okay, she's killed him again. She's stabbed him now. She's stabbed him multiple times now. And she's just kind of sitting in the corner. And she tells the kids, go get help down the street. And you see Michael in the background one last time sit up. And he looks at which I know you were a semi-wrestling fan in the late 90s. You saw the Undertaker.
Like the Undertaker would do that, yeah.
Yeah, the Undertaker stole that. Like the Undertaker does that sit up and the head turn. And I always thought that was fantastic that the Undertaker, a horror wrestling character, took something from horror movies and worked it into his character in WWE. I always thought that was really, really smart of the Undertaker to do. And so you get that head tilt, and then of course you get that great music. And the kids come screaming out of the house, and of course, wouldn't you know it, Sam Loomis is walking down the street. He has a gun in hand, and he realizes Michael's in this house. So he runs into the house, and the tension is crazy. Michael is right behind Laurie. She still doesn't know it, and then there's a struggle. They're strangling each other, and there's a point where Laurie gets his mask off. And what was your reaction? Because I actually have a good little story about the first time you see Michael Myers without his mask off. But did you have any reaction to it?
Not really. I just remember I was like, there's no way they're going to show his face, and you see it for maybe a split second, if that.
Yeah, exactly. And like, this was my thing. Like when I first saw the movie, I thought nothing of it. Right? Thought absolutely nothing of it. And the same night, like I was talking about before, my friends that I went to the movie theaters that saw this movie, they didn't like it or whatever. The only thing they talked about in a positive light in my eyes was that scene where you see his face for a split second. I remember my friend Kristen saying, oh my God, his face was deformed. And then I remember my friend Jeremy, he was saying that his face wasn't deformed, he was just a normal guy. And it was a few people saw what Kristen saw, a few people saw what Jeremy saw. And I'm driving home and I'm just listening to this conversation. I'm like, this is an aspect, a layer of this movie that I've never heard anybody talk about before. And it's like, I think personally, it's just a normal guy. I think that was the point. But it's the fact that after all of this stuff and all of this mayhem and all this blood, people saw what they wanted to see. People saw what the fear in their eyes looked like is what Michael Myers' face was. And that's the great thing about horror. It's that it's so subjective. What might scare me might not scare you. What might scare you might not scare me. But fear it's all about perception. It's all about how we perceive things. Like horror to my friend Kristen was that Michael Myers face, even though there was nothing that I could tell that was distorted about it. But it was that she kept going back. Like, I think it was for a split second, but I think he looked demented or something. Like she was trying to explain that maybe this is a reason. And then my friend Jeremy's go for it.
I think his eye is messed up, to be honest with you, now that I think about it, because they show it for real quick, and I think the one eye that she stabs him with the hanger with, I think is messed up.
Yeah, and it's just for that split second, and like I don't think John Carpenter did any effects on that. I've never heard any story of prosthetic being put on. This was Tony Moran. You see Tony Moran's face, but Nick Castle, and he's going to be in a new one, actually played Michael Myers throughout the entire movie. It's a similar thing with like Warrington Gillette and Steve Dash from Friday the 13th Part 2, where Steve Dash played him the entire time, except when you see Jason's face, that's Warrington Gillette. But it's kind of the same thing here. And I thought that was so strange that like these people, a movie that came out 40 years ago, were arguing over this point that absolutely kind of meant nothing. But it was cool to me that they saw it. Like she was like, that's the real terror of this movie. And I was like, wow, like that's so interesting that you can get a different perspective 40 years later on a movie that I've seen to death, and I know you've seen to death. But of course, Loomis runs up the stairs, shoots Michael 6 times, once in the side, and then he shoots him a bunch of times in the chest, where Michael keeps backing up, falls off this balcony, hits the ground, and Sam Loomis kind of just stares and kind of turns to Laurie Strode. And you get the final closing lines of this movie where he looks at Laurie Strode, and Laurie Strode goes, "Was he the boogeyman?" going back to harken back to what Tommy was asking about, the boogeyman, is he real? Is he real? And even now you could see that Laurie herself, that was calling Tommy all these crazy things. Oh, the boogeyman doesn't exist. Boogeyman doesn't exist. She believed. Now the boogeyman was this shape to her, and now the boogeyman was Michael Myers. And was he the boogeyman? And of course Donald Pleasance goes, as a matter of fact, it was. And he walks up to the balcony where Michael Myers falls off, and there's no body there. And there's this amazing look on Sam Loomis's face as the movie kind of it plays out. You hear the music, and they kind of pan on his face for a while, and it's the look of, my gosh, I did everything I could to prevent this, and he's still got away. And the evil is still out there. And the evil can be anywhere, as the next few shots are a shot behind a bush, a shot behind a door, a shot of a closet. All these things that we've seen Michael Myers do throughout the movie, we keep seeing these shots over and over again. He can be here. He can be there. And you hear the breathing over and over every shot. And that's John Carpenter's point. It's the evil is still out there, and it could be anywhere, and it can go after anybody. And there's no motive. There's no motivation. There's no reason as to why Michael wants to kill Laurie Strode, why he killed Laurie Strode's friends, why he kills his sister to begin with. There's no reason or motive in this movie, and I think that's the scariest thing in the world, don't you think?
Oh, yeah, man. Like I said, the movie's I don't think there's a single flaw in the whole movie, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I know, and like that's the thing. Like, were you? What was your initial like child reaction of Michael being gone? Because I was stunned when I first saw it. I was like, okay, they killed him, and I was thinking, okay, maybe in the sequel he'll come back from the dead, like Jason style, Part 6, gets hit by lightning in the graveyard, something. I was because I had seen all the Friday 13th by this time, and I was like, okay. But the fact that he was gone and he survived these gunshots and now we don't know where he is, I was just like,
hey man, it's a shock, yeah.
Yeah, right. Like I was just so stunned, man, and like leaving the theater and leaving. Well, the first time I watched this movie, just leaving, being like, he can be anywhere. And like I remember coming into my house like a few days later with my mom. I had all the groceries and it was nighttime, and she was taking her damn time with the keys. And it was taking her a while, and I just remember looking over my shoulder, looking for Michael Myers. That stuff stays with you. It's that feeling.
I still do that now sometimes when I'm by myself.
Dude, same, man. And that's the thing. Like, that's how strong that this was. It's like you still look over your shoulder. Nothing's there, but there's some human instinct that makes you continue to look. And that's another reason why I love horror movies so much. But man, if you
on your feet.
Yeah, exactly. I'm 21 years old. I still look over my shoulder. It's just that's the beauty of these things, and that's the beauty of John Carpenter's Halloween. I think overall, I think I know what you're going to rate it, but I would give this movie a 10 out of 10. I think it's a perfect horror movie. I agree with you. I think everything about it it really, and I think here's a question I actually would like to ask you. Why do you think this movie has stood the test of time? Like, why do you think people still come back to this movie again and again and again? Like, what do you think that driving factor is for the mass majority of horror fans?
I mean, for me, the John Carpenter is one of my favorite directors. All his scores throughout all of his movies they're kind of similar, but they're just so good.
Mm.
I don't know what else to say.
No worries. I feel like it's one of those movies that I think the great thing about it is that, and the reason it does stand the test of time is that because evil is timeless. This was an entity. You had your Frankensteins, your Draculas, your Wolfmans. That was a certain time period of the Universal monster movies of the 30s. You had, moving on, and you had paranormal stuff in the 40s, big bug movies in the 50s. Every decade kind of had its own feel. But the 70s and was, of course, you have your Black Christmases, your Texas Chainsaw Massacres, your Last House on the Left, your movies like that, right? But Halloween, I think, stands above them all in the one fact that it's just evil on two legs. It's an evil entity. This is not a man. This is evil. And that's why I think Michael Myers, and that's why I think this movie has stood the test of time. It's because evil's timeless. Evil will always exist. And this is the entity that John Carpenter went with is a guy in blue overalls and the classic William Shatner mask that's spray painted white, and they just cut the eyes out. Like that's that's classic film lore, man. Like, and I really, really,
I still can't believe that mask actually. I can't believe they use that mask and it like actually scares people.
yeah, that's the thing. And like, it's funny with the other sequels, they never seem to get that mask right. And I believe they bought that mask for $1.
I can't believe it was that cheap.
Yeah, I know. They were trying to come up with a mask and they couldn't do it. And they were like, all right, we're just going to go to the store and we'll work with what we got. So they bought a Spock mask, the Shatner mask, cut the eyes out, spray painted it white, and the face of fear was born. It's as simple as that. And same thing with Jason. The writers were big hockey players. Let's throw a hockey mask on them. Bam, you have one of the most symbolic, horror iconic masks in history. It's Freddy. It's Jason and Michael. Those are the two. Those masks are what resonates with people. You show that to people that don't like horror movies, they know what that's from. Like, I was actually standing in the deli this morning getting a sandwich, and this guy comes up to me and goes, "Oh, Michael Myers, cool shirt." And, by the way, I'm showing. I don't know how well you could see that there. Can you see it? You see it good? Okay, good. I'm just making sure with my producer that people can see. I got the old Halloween 2 shirt on here. But I like I said, I think it's a 10 out of 10. I think for a horror movie, when it comes to atmosphere, when it comes to music, when it comes to an origin, a story, and I think Donald Pleasance's acting, Jamie Lee Curtis's acting, Nick Castle's acting, I think it's perfect movie, man. And I think it is one of the great horror movies of all time. I know I've talked with you. I do like part 2 a little bit more. That's a nostalgic thing because I saw it first. But I think that this is easily...
That makes sense.
This is easily the best Halloween movie, I think. Like, I won't argue that. I just like the other one because I was a little kid when I saw it,
I agree, man. I like part 2 too, man. It's got a little bit more blood, a little more. You see Michael a lot more, I feel like, in part 2.
Yeah, absolutely. They amp everything up. That's usually the sequel route. Like Terminator 2, they amped everything up.
Yeah.
Like we were talking about before, Phantasm 2, they amped everything up. Same thing with Halloween 2 was no exception. But okay, so I had to rate this one, I'd say 10 out of 10. I'm going to ask you the stupid question that I know the answer of. What would you give this one out of 10, Ryan?
I'm going to say 11 out of 10. I bet you didn't expect that.
Dude, that's awesome, man. This one broke the scale, and there's no better movie to break the scale with. John Carpenter's Halloween, for everybody watching, listening, it's a fantastic movie, and I could not recommend it more. But that is why I would like to get into, we have a few minutes left here, about 13 minutes. I wanted to talk about the new Halloween coming out in 2018. Of course, that's this year, of course. Yeah, where am I? That's how tired I am. But it comes out October 19th. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's been a long day, people. I was giving blood in the AM. I was giving blood in the AM, Michael style, But I wanted to ask you, man, what are your thoughts on Halloween 2018?
To be honest, I hope it's good, man. I waited since H2O, because I hated Resurrection. The Rob Zombie ones are terrible. I've seen the previews. There's been 2 or 3 trailers for this one. It looks like they're doing it correctly. I hope they do it right. They took all this time to do it, so I feel like they're going to do it correctly. Danny McBride's never done a horror movie, but Jordan Peele never did one before, and look what Get Out did.
That's true. And you look at Danny McBride too. He was he creatively involved with Alien? What was the name of the new Alien movie? It's slipping.
Alien Covenant.
Alien Covenant. I know he acted in it, but was he creatively involved?
To be honest, I don't know. I haven't even seen that yet.
Okay, I saw Alien Covenant and I thought it was a big letdown. I hope he was not.
That's
creative.
what I've heard. That's why I never watched it.
I would not recommend it to my worst enemy. I thought it was a horrendous movie. But as long as he was not creatively involved with that, I've watched interviews with him and the director David Gordon Green. And if you don't know who David Gordon Green is, David Gordon Green is the same man who brought you Pineapple Express, one of my favorite all-time stoner movies from 2008, starring the great Seth Rogen and James Franco, and Danny McBride playing Red. Shout out to Red, one of my all-time favorite comedic actors and one of my all-time favorite comedic characters. But it's crazy to me that they're the two that are going to do this movie, because I know for a long time David Gordon Green was signed on to do the Suspiria remake, which is also coming out the following week, and it's going to be done by a completely different set of people. So he's getting to reboot, remake, whatever, revitalize a horror franchise that he never thought he'd get into, of course, with Halloween. But I mean, do you have high hopes for this one? Are you happy to see Jamie Lee back? And I know that they are dropping the whole concept of the fact that the other movies exist. This is going to be a direct continuation from the first one, and 40 years later.
Yeah, I'm excited to see her back, man. She looks badass in it. I mean, from what I've seen, it looks like it's going to be good. From the newest trailer, they showed the one scene where she hits him I think it's in the face with like a baseball bat, and he goes flying down the stairs, and you see him laying there, and he does the iconic sit-up thing. It looks exactly like the original, which I think that might be Nick Castle doing that, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, it looked like my producer has given us an extra 5 minutes, by the way, so we don't have to wrap this up at 4:00. Yeah, baby, bonus time. Just say,
go.
I was just making sure because I want to make sure we can talk a little bit more about this. But I think the trailer, it literally could be called like Jamie or Laurie's Got a Gun, right? Like that was the first vibe I got. It looks very much like Halloween H2O, a little bit of Halloween 4. And I think I know how you feel about this, but man, don't you wish they would have brought Danielle Harris back to play Jamie Lee's daughter?
That's the only thing I don't like about it, that they didn't bring her back. I don't know why. I don't even think they asked her to do it.
See, that's just like disheartening to hear because Danielle Harris, people...
She's very mad about it, too. I've seen tweets and stuff by her. She's pretty mad about it.
I don't blame her, man, because she is like, obviously I would consider her one of the great final girls of all time too, and she did it when she was a little kid. For people that don't know, she was in Halloween 4 and Halloween 5. She played Laurie Strode's character's niece, and Michael is after her in these movies. So instead of chasing Laurie Strode in her early 20s, or I guess, and technically she's a teenager, even though she's not, but he's chasing his niece now. And like I always thought that was such a cool dynamic, and I always thought Danielle Harris did a great job acting in those movies. Like in the fifth one, I always loved the scene where they're in the laundry chute. And he's just stabbing holes through the laundry chute, and she's stepping on his knife to try to get up. Like, that's some good stuff. And from what I understand, they did not use a double. Danielle Harris did that at the age of 10 years old. They actually had markings for for her to put her feet. Like, that's dangerous.
I had no idea.
That's really dangerous if you ask me. Like, she could have really like got hurt and stuff. And like, that's amazing. She's an absolute trooper. I love Danielle Harris. I wish she was in this movie. I think they replaced her with the actress named Judy Greer.
I don't really like her.
Yeah, I believe she was in Cursed. Wasn't she in Wes Craven's Cursed?
Yes, she was. She was like the publicist or something, I think.
Yes. That's the only movie that comes to mind that I know that she was in. And, she's whatever. I mean, it is what it is. But I know us diehard horror fans would have liked to have seen the great, voluptuous Danielle Harris, who we did get to see naked in Rob Zombie's remake. And I very much appreciated that, Mr. Zombie. If for nothing else, I got to see that in that movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that was the only good part about that movie.
Absolutely. I marked out. I went, oh my God, Danielle Harris is going to be in this movie. Like, will she get naked? And I was like, yes. Like I remember going to see this in the theater, just absolutely just being like Rocky Balboa at the top of the steps. Like, yes, like she got nude, thankfully, like that's every Halloween fan's dream kind of. But they actually have, I think, a pretty decent cast other than that. They have, I believe, Will Pack. What's his name? The guy who's playing the sheriff?
I think it's Will Patton, I want to say.
Yes, Will Patton, yes. He's in Independence Day, Remember the Titans. He's done a ton of movies. He's a really good character actor. He's going to play the sheriff in the movie. Of course,
I think he'll do good as a sheriff.
I think
he could play the sheriff well.
Yes, I think he'll do a perfect job. And it looks like from the trailer, it looks like a movie that's going to try to return to the roots. It's going to try, and I mean, this is the thing though. This is my only doubt, and I am excited about the movie, and I do have high hopes. And everybody who is listening to this, please go see it. Do not pull what you did with Hellfest. Nobody went to go see Hellfest. I'm very upset with people.
I didn't see it because it went down so much. It went from like 75% to like now it's at like 43%.
Wow, that's a drastic drop off. But like,
it went down a lot.
Yeah, I like to see horror movies make money. Like, I don't care what they're about. Like, I just want to see the genre do good, so we keep getting more content in the mainstream. Like, you and I know about all these direct-to-DVD movies and these movies that you can only watch if you stream it here or there. I remember for a long time, The Babadook was a movie that nobody could get their hands on, and then when they finally got it, this became this big hit in America. Like, I like to see horror movies make a lot of money when they come out, and I have no doubt that this movie will, but I'm going to advise people, please go see Halloween. Please go see it. Please go support it. It's a horror movie. It's in the theater. It's going to be a fun time. Get your girlfriend, your broskies, your girl, anybody. get some popcorn, get your drinks, candy, whatever. Go to the theater and support this movie because it's a horror movie in the mainstream. And Michael is back.
I'll probably see it 3 days in a row, to be honest with you.
As long as you like it, correct?
Dude, even if it's bad, I'm probably still going to go see it a couple times.
Dude, yeah, you. For people that don't know this, Ryan is the most dedicated Halloween fan of all time. Like he'll watch these movies like he'll watch the same one twice in a month. Like I'll space it out a lot more than that. But man, like Ryan is as hardcore of a Michael Myers Halloween fan as there is, and I absolutely love it. That's how everybody should be with the movies they love most. But I think it looks like a movie that's going to go back to that suspense, that atmosphere. But I figure we kind of get into a few questions about the movie. Number one, the original had 3, or I guess 4 technically, on-screen kills. How many on-screen kills do you believe will be in Halloween 2018?
I'm going to say, on screen, I'm going to say 7.
7, okay.
Total, we're going to go probably over 20.
Over 20? Wow, okay.
Well, I'm thinking when he breaks out, he has to kill at least 2 or 3 people there.
Okay.
And then from there, I mean, it's got to be close to there. I'm thinking. I'm just throwing a guess out there.
This is This it feels like a sports show right now. I'm taking the over on the Minnesota. Yeah, right. I'm taking the over on the Haddonfield slasher. But I'm gonna go with 10 on-screen kills. I think we're gonna get 10.
Okay.
I think that's around. I think it's a good number. I think we could get 12 total. I could see a couple off-screen deaths. I think what's great about this movie is it's that it is really trying to go back to the roots, and it really is trying to pay homage to the original movie, of course, with Laurie Strode. I don't know. I know you and I are not the biggest fan of H2O. That movie tried to do that. And it was directed by Steve Miner, who's a director I really like, by the way, who made House, which I talked about.
Yeah, he did Friday the 13th, didn't he? He did one of the Friday the 13th, right?
He did Friday the 13th Part 2 and Part 3. So he did those 2 movies, and then he followed those 2 movies with House, which I talked about on the last show, one of my favorite crazy horror movies, haunted house horror movies. I think Steve Miner was a good Lake Placid. He's made a lot of pretty good stuff. The only thing I think with H2O where it kind of fell flat, to me at least, was I think they tried to integrate some of what was going on with Scream at that time. There's a lot of Kevin Williamson stench to that script where, you know what I mean? Like, would you agree with that?
I know. I agree with you totally. I hated the mask in H2O too. I couldn't. The eye holes were. You mean
to tell me your favorite mask isn't the CGI Michael Myers mask?
No.
It's so bad. It's so bad. There's a scene where they literally they didn't have him in the mask. They put a CGI mask over him. And I was just like, I screamed bloody murder. I was like, this is horrendous. Like, I don't care what anybody says. I think Resurrection is better. Like, I'd rather watch Busta Rhymes Kung Fu fight Michael Myers than watch Michael Myers kill people in a CGI mask.
Statement. Resurrection's better. That's a bold statement.
Dude, I honestly think it is. Like, I can get through Resurrection. Like, there's H2O, it's just a mess. Like, Josh Hartnett. Like, I like Josh Hartnett, but, like, why does she have a son now? Like, just, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a weird plot point in that movie.
Yeah, it's strange. Like, he was coming off movies like The Faculty, which I like a lot better than that. I just think
I like Faculty's good. Yeah,
Faculty's actually for anybody that'll be my recommendation of the week. Watch The Faculty from 1998. Really, really fun, underrated horror movie. I really enjoy that one. But I think with this new Halloween, like with all the Halloweens, at least the ones that preceded the original, they had a chance to do Jamie Lee and Danielle Harris together. And Miranda's looking at me crazy. The light just went on here. I don't know. It's magic. Michael Myers. 2?
Yeah, he knows we're talking.
I thought I had till 4. Oh, okay. But yeah, it's one of those things. They had a lot of chances to get Danielle Harris back onto like back with Jamie Lee at the same time, and I think that would have been really, really cool dynamic to see because those are your 2 final girls of the series. You could see them kicking ass together, and they never did that with H2O. But H2O to me was a big letdown. And I would agree with you. I think the remake was a big letdown for an exploitation. It was Rob Zombie's take on it was exploitation. Let's explain.
Yeah, it was too over. It was way over the top. All the cursing and just it was. I didn't like it at all.
The
Michael Myers was like a giant. It was just what the remake. Yeah, it was Rob Zombie.
They recast him with Tyler
like
Mane.
8 feet tall.
I love that they recast him with Tyler Mane, who was like a pro wrestler, and you have William Forsythe playing the abusive father in this movie, and he's like, that boy bought a rat. Who pays money for a goddamn rat? You know, like like it's just, you're just kind of scratching your head. You're like, this isn't The Devil's Rejects. Isn't this supposed to be a remake of Halloween? But that's Rob Zombie, man. Rob Zombie knows exploitation. And okay, the producer's now telling me 5 minutes. Thank you, sir. I don't even know I don't even know this man's name. I'll ask him after, but. I think like he went way too far. Let's explain this, and let's kill have him be an animal killer, and let's like
it's too much.
It's way too much because there never needed to be a reason. Like okay, like my thing is with this new movie, my biggest concern, and this is just because I'm a mark for part 2, and you know this, is that in part 2 you learn that Michael and Laurie are brother and sister, and I always loved that dynamic. I always thought that was really cool. I thought, wow, you know, like Luke, I am your father. Now, Michael, I am your sister. You know what I mean? I always thought that really added some kind of meat and potatoes to it. But my thing is with this movie, they're forgetting all that. That's fine. We're going back to he's just killing for the sake of killing. There is no reason. And I think that's scary, and I think that's a good direction to go. The only question is, why is he going after Jamie Lee again?
I don't see it. The only thing I can think of is just she's the one who got away.
And that's good, and that's a good enough reason to me. Like
yeah, that's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, you're the stone cold evil entity, and she's the one that got away, and I will kill whoever gets in my way of killing Laurie Strode. And I think the movie's going to be a big critical hit. I think critics and audiences alike are going to really, really dig Halloween 2018. I think David Gordon Green does understand that the atmosphere and suspense and tension, and that's what made the original movie work. It doesn't look like it's going to be like the classic like aesthetic to a slasher that I always say is the boobs, blood, and mayhem. I think you'll have very small doses of that throughout this movie. I think you'll have them, but they're going to be very, very laid back, and I think it's going to focus more on Laurie and Michael.
More on tension and Laurie Strode. I think it's going to be more like atmosphere kind of thing like the original was, which I hope it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Same here. And I think that will really work. I think simple will work because they tried to make it 20 years later and Laurie's going to confront, okay, whatever. They tried. That failed. Then they tried to go the exploitation route and give all these reasons and recast all these people who are horrible actors. I'm sorry that they were terrible and no chemistry. Danielle Harris is the only one that was watchable. And now you're here.
Well, the girl, Scout Taylor Compton played Laurie. She was awful.
Yeah, she was awful. She's good to look at now, especially. But like, to me, the scene that's the worst scene in the entire movie is the three of them in the library, and it's like they're all talking. They had no flippin' chemistry. You would have thought they met that day. Like they were horrible. The girl that played Linda was horrendous. Like. It was offensive to me. I was like, you really expect me to buy that these girls have been friends for years? Are you kidding me? Like, people will knock the acting of Annie and Linda. Yes, they were over the top, but at least you knew that they were friends. Like, you bought that they were friends. And that's just, I don't know, that's a sticking point to me. But do you have a final prediction? We got 2 more minutes here. Do you have a final prediction onto what Halloween 2018 will do?
Money-wise, I'm opening weekend, so we can talk about the three-day opening weekend. I'm going to say $60 million. I'm going high.
60 million. You're going high. Okay. I think it'll go somewhere along there. I'm thinking probably 35 to 45 million, somewhere in there. But I think it'll make a lot of money. And go support.
I read today that Jason Blum actually wants to do sequels, so we'll see how that works.
Yeah, we'll see how that works. Reboots that, we're just going to make this one. And then, of course, they never do because money talks, people. And it's not.
I hope they don't.
I hope so, too. But, we'll see. I'm sure we'll have a Halloween 2020 somewhere in there. So it is what it is. But, wrapping up here, I believe we have one more final minute. Ryan, I just wanted to say thank you so very much for coming on my show. I had an absolute ball talking all things Michael Myers, The Shape, Halloween with you, man. It was an absolute pleasure to have you on, man.
Yeah, man, it was awesome. I'm more than welcome to come anytime you talk about Halloween or any horror movie, really, except Aliens. I don't know anything about that.
Dude, absolutely. And I want to wish you and your wife the absolute best with the child when it comes next week. I hope it doesn't interfere with, obviously, the movie and stuff, but hopefully you get to see it and hopefully enjoy it. And I'm sure
I'll find a way to see it. Don't worry.
Oh, I'm sure you will. But Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to be all for now. Ryan, again, I appreciate it. Thank you all for watching and listening. I am the horror host of the evening, the Pajama Pants Playa, the Cemetery Man of Salem, Mass, John Grande, signing off. Peace.